What if I told you that everything you think you know about Tesla is a lie? What if the story of the lone genius, the visionary who conjured an electric car revolution out of thin air, was just that, a story, a carefully crafted myth? We see the rockets, we see the tweets, we see the man who has become synonymous with the future, Elon Musk. And when we think of Tesla, we think of him. But the real story, the one buried beneath the layers of branding and celebrity, is far more complex, far more dramatic, and infinitely more human. It's a story of two forgotten founders, a brutal boardroom betrayal, and a company that was literally hours away from collapsing into dust, not once, but multiple times. This isn't the sanitized corporate history you've been fed. This is the story of a desperate gamble, a series of near-death experiences that forged a company unlike any other. It's a story about how a small team of Silicon Valley engineers, driven by a quiet, almost academic obsession, accidentally started a war with the most powerful industry on the planet. And it all begins not with a bang, but with a quiet, nagging question in the mind of a man you've probably never heard of. The year is 2003. The world is not clamoring for electric cars. In fact, they are a joke. They are golf carts. They are slow, ugly, and can barely make it to the end of the driveway. The idea of a high-performance, desirable electric vehicle is pure science fiction. The auto giants in Detroit, Germany, and Japan have dismissed the idea entirely. They've run the numbers, they've done the market research, and the conclusion is unanimous. Nobody wants an electric car. But in a small corner of Silicon Valley, a brilliant engineer named Martin Eberhard couldn't shake a thought. He wasn't a car guy, not in the traditional sense. He was a tech guy. He had co-founded one of the first e-reader companies and made a fortune. He was looking for his next challenge, but he was also a man with a conscience. He was worried about climate change, about America's dependence on foreign oil, and he saw the gas-guzzling SUVs on the road as a personal affront to logic. He did the math. He calculated the energy efficiency of a gasoline engine and was horrified. It was a relic, a shockingly inefficient piece of 19th century technology that was still powering the 21st century world. There had to be a better way. His search led him to a tiny, obscure company called AC Propulsion. They had built a small, experimental electric sports car called the T-Zero. It was little more than a kit car, a raw, stripped-down proof of concept. But it was fast. Shockingly fast. It used thousands of tiny lithium-ion battery cells, the same kind you'd find in a laptop, wired together to create a powerful battery pack. This was the spark. This was the aha moment. Eberhard saw the potential. He saw that the limitation of electric cars wasn't the motor. It was the battery. And battery technology, thanks to the consumer electronics boom, was getting better and cheaper every single year. This was Moore's law for batteries. While the auto industry was stuck in the past, the future was being built in the pockets and on the desks of millions of people. Eberhard teamed up with his old business partner, Mark Tarpenning, another sharp, pragmatic engineer. Together, they decided to take the plunge. They weren't trying to build a car company. That was insane. They were trying to build a tech company that happened to make a car. Their plan was simple, and in hindsight, brilliant. They would start at the high end. They would build a car so compelling, so beautiful, and so fast that wealthy early adopters wouldn't be able to resist it. It wouldn't be a compromise. It would be an object of desire. The profits from this high-end car would then be used to fund the development of a cheaper, more mainstream vehicle, and so on. It was the master plan. In July 2003, with this vision in mind, Eberhard and Tarpenning officially incorporated Tesla Motors. The name was a tribute to the brilliant, eccentric inventor Nikola Tesla, a man whose genius was often overshadowed by the commercial success of his rivals. It was a fitting, almost prophetic choice. They licensed the Zero technology from AC Propulsion and began the monumental task of turning a rough prototype into a production-ready vehicle, the Tesla Roadster. But they needed money, a lot of money. Building a car, even a low-volume sports car, is one of the most capital-intensive businesses in the world. They put in their own money, but it wasn't nearly enough. They started making the rounds in Silicon Valley, pitching their crazy idea to venture capitalists. The reaction was almost universally negative. A car company in Silicon Valley? You're insane. The VCs understood software, they understood the internet, but they didn't understand hardware. They didn't understand manufacturing, supply chains, and the brutal, low-margin world of the automotive industry. It was a world they wanted no part of. Just as their funds were beginning to dry up, a fateful connection was made. A friend suggested they talk to Elon Musk. At this point, Musk was already a Silicon Valley legend. He had co-founded Zip2 and sold it for a fortune. He had then co-founded PayPal and sold it to eBay for an even bigger fortune. He was now pouring his hundreds of millions into his next audacious venture, SpaceX, a company dedicated to making humanity a multi-planetary species. Musk was different. He wasn't just a software guy. He was a physicist. He understood the first principles of engineering. He was also, like Eberhard, deeply concerned about the future of energy and humanity's dependence on fossil fuels. He had been exploring the idea of electric cars himself. When Eberhard and Tarpening presented their plan, Musk got it immediately. He understood the battery technology. He understood the top-down strategy. He saw the path forward that other investors had missed. In early 2004, Musk led Tesla's Series A funding round, investing $6.5 million and becoming the company's chairman of the board. He wasn't a founder. He didn't come up with the idea. But without his money, and more importantly, his conviction, Tesla would have died before it ever built a single car. The lie, the myth, that Musk was the sole creator, began to form later. But the truth is that the company was born from the vision of Eberhard and the pragmatism of Tarpening, and it was saved by the wallet of Musk. With funding secured, the real work began. And it was a nightmare. Turning the T0 into the Roadster was a far bigger challenge than they had ever imagined. The AC propulsion prototype was a starting point, but almost every single component had to be redesigned, re-engineered, and validated. The transmission was a constant source of failure. The battery packs, made of 6 831 individual lithium-ion cells, were a thermal management nightmare. If they got too hot, they could catch fire in a chain reaction known as thermal runaway. The team worked relentlessly, fueled by passion and a sense of mission. They were a small band of rebels taking on the giants. The culture was pure Silicon Valley startup. Long hours, intense debates, and a belief that they could solve any problem with enough brainpower. Musk, as chairman, was not a passive investor. He was deeply involved, especially in the design and engineering. He had strong opinions. He pushed for a carbon fiber body to save weight. He obsessed over the details, from the shape of the headlights to the feel of the door handles. This led to friction. Eberhard was the CEO, the man on the ground running the company day to day. Musk was the chairman, the primary investor with a powerful and often conflicting vision. The budget started to swell. The timeline for the Roadster launch kept slipping. The initial cost estimate of $25 million to develop the car ballooned to over $140 million. The pressure was immense. By 2007, the company was in a state of crisis. The Roadster was still not ready for production, and they were burning through cash at an alarming rate. The relationship between Eberhard and Musk, once collaborative, had completely broken down. They clashed over strategy, over engineering decisions, and over the escalating costs. Musk, backed by the board, made a ruthless decision. In August 2007, Martin Eberhard, the man who had the initial vision, the man who had founded the company, was unceremoniously fired as CEO. It was a brutal, shocking move. The official story was that Eberhard was being moved into a new role, but the reality was that he was being pushed out of the company he had created. The board installed an interim CEO, but the company was adrift. The crisis deepened. The Roadster was still plagued with problems, and the financial situation was becoming desperate. A few months later, in a second wave of the coup, Mark Tarpening also left the company. The original founders were gone. The soul of the company had been ripped out. Musk, who had been the architect of the ouster, eventually stepped in as CEO himself in late 2008. He was now in complete control. But he had inherited a company on the brink of total collapse. This was the moment, the one decision that changed everything. It wasn't a single, clean choice made in a quiet boardroom. It was a messy, desperate, all-or-nothing gamble made in the crucible of the 2008 global financial crisis. The world's economy was imploding. Credit markets were frozen. The auto industry was on its knees, with giants like GM and Chrysler begging for government bailouts. And in the middle of this economic apocalypse, Tesla was trying to launch a $100,000 electric sports car. It was the worst possible timing. The company was hemorrhaging money. The Roadster was finally in production, but the costs were far higher than the sale price. They were losing money on every single car they sold. They had a grand vision for their next car, a sedan codenamed White Star, which would become the Model S, but they had no money to develop it. They were weeks, sometimes days, away from bankruptcy. Musk put everything on the line. He invested the last of his personal fortune, from the PayPal sale, into the company. He had two other major bets at the time, SpaceX and a solar energy company called Solar City. Both were also struggling. He was on the verge of losing everything. He later described it as staring into the abyss. The decision was not just to survive. It was to go on the offensive. While the rest of the world was retreating, Tesla made a bet that was so audacious, so contrary to all conventional wisdom, that it looked like pure insanity. They decided to build the Model S. This wasn't just another car. The Model S was conceived as the car that would prove electric vehicles could be better than gasoline cars in every way. Not just faster, but safer, more practical, and more beautiful. It would have a massive touchscreen, something no other car had. It would receive over-the-air software updates, constantly improving like a smartphone. It would be built from the ground up on a revolutionary skateboard chassis with the battery pack forming the floor of the car, giving it an incredibly low center of gravity and huge amounts of interior space. To build this car, they needed a factory. In 2010, in another move of stunning audacity, Tesla bought a defunct auto plant in Fremont, California, for a bargain price of $42 million. It was a former joint venture between GM and Toyota called NUMMI. It was a massive facility, capable of producing 500,000 cars a year. For a company that had only ever produced a few hundred Roadsters, this was like a minnow swallowing a whale. The world thought they were crazy. Analysts predicted their imminent demise. The established auto industry scoffed. But the decision to build the Model S and to secure their own mass production facility was the pivotal moment. It was a declaration of intent. Tesla was no longer a niche manufacturer of expensive toys. It was aiming to become a major player in the automotive world. They were betting the entire company on this one car. The development of the Model S was another brutal, near-death experience. The engineering challenges were immense. They had to design their own battery pack, their own motors, their own software. They had to figure out how to manufacture a car at scale, something they had no experience with. The pressure was relentless. Musk was a demanding, and at times tyrannical, leader. He pushed his teams to the breaking point, demanding the impossible on impossible timelines. He slept on the factory floor. He was obsessed with every detail, from the panel gaps to the responsiveness of the touchscreen. In 2012, against all odds, the first Model S rolled off the production line. It was a triumph. The car was a revelation. It won award after award, including Motor Trend's Car of the Year. It was a critical and commercial success. It was beautiful, silent, and ludicrously fast. It had a range of over 265 miles, which was unheard of at the time. It fundamentally changed the public perception of what an electric car could be. But the decision to build the Model S was only half of the genius move. The other half was the decision to build the supercharger network. Musk understood that the biggest obstacle to EV adoption was range anxiety. People were afraid of running out of power and being stranded. While other companies were relying on a patchwork of third-party charging stations, Tesla decided to build its own proprietary network of high-speed chargers along major highways. It was an incredibly expensive and bold move. No other car company was also an energy infrastructure company. But it was brilliant. It created a seamless experience for Tesla owners. They could now travel long distances with ease, knowing that a fast, reliable charger was always within reach. It created a powerful competitive moat. If you bought a Tesla, you weren't just buying a car. You were buying into an entire ecosystem. This two-pronged gamble, the revolutionary product, Model S, and the enabling infrastructure, superchargers, was the one-two punch that knocked the auto industry off its feet. It was the decision that transformed Tesla from a struggling startup into a genuine threat. It was a bet that paid off in a way that no one, perhaps not even Musk himself could have fully imagined. But the victory was short-lived. The success of the Model S brought a new, even more terrifying challenge: the specter of mass production. And with it came the darkest period in Tesla's history. The company had survived its infancy, it had survived its adolescence, but now it had to face the brutal reality of adulthood. The crisis point, the moment the empire almost crumbled, wasn't a single event. It was a slow-motion train wreck that lasted for nearly 2 years. It was a period that Musk himself would later call production hell. The plan had always been to follow the Model S with a more affordable, mass-market car, the Model 3. This was the culmination of the original master plan. This was the car that would bring electric vehicles to the masses. The hype was unprecedented. In 2016, Tesla unveiled the Model 3 prototype. The public response was explosive. Hundreds of thousands of people lined up around the world to put down a $1,000 deposit for a car they had never seen in person, from a company that had never successfully mass-produced a vehicle. The company received nearly 400,000 pre-orders in a matter of weeks, representing billions of dollars in potential revenue. It was a stunning vote of confidence. It was also a terrifying promise to keep. Musk, ever the optimist, made a bold and ultimately catastrophic decision. He declared that the Model 3 factory would be a revolutionary alien dreadnought, a factory so automated that it would be like a machine building a machine. Robots would do everything. Human involvement would be minimal. It was a vision of the future, a sci-fi dream of manufacturing. It was also a complete and utter disaster. The ambition collided with the hard, unforgiving reality of the physical world. The robots couldn't do the jobs they were designed for. They were too complex, too sensitive. They would constantly break down. The automated assembly line, which was supposed to be a symphony of efficiency, was a cacophony of errors. The production rate was abysmal. They were supposed to be making thousands of cars a week, but they were struggling to make a few hundred. The company was burning through cash at a rate of hundreds of millions of dollars a month. The promises made to customers and investors were looking increasingly hollow. The media turned on them. Wall Street analysts predicted bankruptcy. Short sellers who bet against the company's stock were circling like vultures. The narrative shifted from visionary innovator to failed showman. The pressure on Musk was unimaginable. The fate of the company, the jobs of tens of thousands of employees, and his own reputation were all on the line. He moved a sleeping bag into the factory. He worked 120-hour weeks, personally overseeing the production line, trying to fix the mess he had created. The alien dreadnought vision was abandoned. In a moment of humbling clarity, Musk admitted that humans are underrated. They ripped out the overly complex robots and replaced them with human workers. They set up a new assembly line in a giant tent outside the main factory, a desperate, makeshift solution that became a symbol of their struggle. This period revealed the dark side of Tesla's culture. The relentless pressure to meet impossible targets led to high rates of employee burnout and injury. The company faced accusations of ignoring safety protocols in the frantic race to ramp up production. Musk's leadership style, once seen as inspiring, was now viewed by many as toxic and erratic. He would lash out at employees, at journalists, and at critics on Twitter. In August 2018, at the peak of the crisis, he sent out an infamous tweet claiming he was considering taking Tesla private and that he had funding secured. It was a lie. The funding was not secured. The tweet sent the stock market into a frenzy and triggered an investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The fallout was immense. Musk was forced to step down as chairman of the board and pay a hefty fine. It was a moment of profound recklessness that damaged his credibility and exposed the immense strain he was under. The company was teetering on the edge. They were once again just weeks away from running out of money. It was 2008 all over again, but on a much grander scale. But somehow, through sheer force of will, they pulled through. The makeshift assembly line in the tent started working. Production numbers began to climb. Slowly at first, then exponentially. They finally started producing the Model 3 in significant volumes. They had stared into the abyss and, for the second time, had managed to pull back from the brink. The production hell crisis was a brutal, humbling experience. It exposed the hubris at the heart of the company's ambition. But it also forged them into a true manufacturing powerhouse. They learned the hard lessons of mass production not from a textbook, but in the crucible of failure. They had survived. They had finally delivered on their promise. The Model 3 went on to become the best-selling electric car in the world. Tesla had not just created a car, it had created a market. The crisis was over, but it left a permanent scar. It revealed the true cost of their ambition and the controversial methods they were willing to use to achieve it. The legacy of Tesla is not what you think it is. Yes, they make fast, beautiful electric cars. Yes, they built a global charging network. But their true impact, their unexpected and far-reaching legacy, is far more profound. They didn't just build a car company, they broke the entire automotive industry. For a century, the auto industry operated on a set of unwritten rules. Cars were sold through a network of independent dealerships, they were powered by gasoline. They were fundamentally mechanical devices that changed very little from year to year. Tesla shattered all of these conventions. They sell their cars directly to consumers, cutting out the dealership middleman. This gives them control over the customer experience and the price. It's a model that the established giants are now desperately trying to copy. They proved that electric cars could be the most desirable, highest-performing cars on the road, forcing every other automaker to accelerate their own EV plans. The wave of electric vehicles coming from Ford, GM, Volkswagen, and others, that is the legacy of Tesla. They were the catalyst, the threat that forced a century-old industry to change or die. But the legacy goes even deeper. Tesla is not a car company. It is a data company on wheels. Every Tesla is a rolling computer, constantly collecting data about how it's driven, how its battery is performing, and the environment around it. This data is used to improve the cars through over-the-air software updates. A Tesla you buy today is a better car a year from now. This is a concept that is completely foreign to the traditional auto industry. And then there is autopilot. The controversial and often misunderstood driver assistance system is the company's biggest and most audacious bet. The goal is not just to assist the driver, but to achieve full self-driving capability. They are taking a unique approach, relying on cameras and a neural network that learns from the millions of miles driven by the Tesla fleet. If they succeed, they won't just have changed the auto industry, they will have changed the very nature of transportation, of cities, of human mobility itself. It's a goal that is still years, perhaps decades, away, and it is fraught with ethical and technical challenges. But the ambition is undeniable. The true legacy of Tesla, then, is that it fundamentally changed the definition of a car. A car is no longer just a mechanical object. It is a piece of hardware, a software platform, and a node in a vast network. It is a product that evolves, learns, and improves over time. This is the revolution. It's a revolution that has been messy, chaotic, and driven by a leader whose methods are often as controversial as his vision is brilliant. It's a story of incredible highs and terrifying lows, of genius and hubris, of idealism and brutal pragmatism. It's a story that is far from over. The company faces immense challenges. Competition is finally here. The established giants are waking up. New startups from China are entering the market with compelling, affordable EVs. Tesla's dominance is no longer guaranteed. They must continue to innovate, to execute, and to navigate the immense complexities of being a global industrial giant. The story of Tesla is a mirror to our times. It reflects our anxieties about climate change, our faith in technological salvation, and our complicated relationship with the larger-than-life figures who promise to build the future. It's a story that forces us to ask difficult questions about the price of progress and the nature of innovation. So as we look at this company that defied the odds, that survived its own self-inflicted wounds, and that dragged an entire industry into the future, we are left with a final, lingering question. Did Tesla's ruthless break-the-rules approach justify the revolution it created, or is there a darker lesson to be learned from its story? Let me know what you think in the comments.